And that's all I have on that, but I am going to give an introduction to Steve O'Meara, and I want to thank him for beaming in all the way from Botswana in Southern Africa. That was a long journey, and I'm sure you're tired, but hopefully you have enough energy to speak to us. Steve is an old friend of ours. He grew up in this area in New England and had been to Skyscrapers and to Seagrave Observatory many times. He's been living in Botswana for the last 8 years. I'm personally jealous of that because I've been below the equator twice. I've seen how magnificent the southern skies are. And while I enjoy our northern skies, I don't think they hold a candle to some of the things that can be seen as you go below the equator. So if you ever get the chance, put that on your bucket list and at least try to get down there and see that. Steve is going to give us an overview of how and why he came to live in Botswana. There'll be an emphasis on its natural and cultural setting. He's also going to talk about the dark skies, and he has promised some imaging from some of those skies. Some of you may know that, or remember that Steve is an award-winning astronomer and author. He contributes currently for Astronomy magazine. He also worked on the editorial staff of Sky and Telescope magazine in Cambridge. And he's most famous, I think, for being the person that spotted the spokes in the rings of Saturn, which was, he saw them visually through a telescope, I believe, on top of the Center for Astrophysics. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Some years before Voyager came out, or got out there rather, and there was a little bit of controversy, I think, about his observations, but it was really nice, I'm sure, satisfying to be proven right about that. That's one of the things that sticks out in my mind. And after the talk, if, you know, hopefully, Steve, you can hang around for a little while, maybe some people have some other reminiscences. And,
of course.
You know, kind of get pointed. But I don't want to drone on any longer because I'm really looking forward to this. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time and making the effort to reach out to us now. So Steve, without any further ado, thank you for coming, and I look forward to hearing from you.
All right. And okay. So, all right, I'm going to talk, as Steve said, talk to you about Botswana, why I'm here, the skies, the beauty of the skies, and hopefully to entice you to come to Botswana. First of all, where in the world is Botswana? Now, I'm not just putting it there because I'm believing that none of you know where it is, but honestly, when I came here, I didn't even look on a map, and I arrived in Botswana without even knowing where it was. So it is Southern Africa, but the important thing to mention is that it is not South Africa. The difference is no different than saying the United States is the same as Mexico or Canada. Botswana is an independent country. It was a British protectorate up until the 1960s when it gained its independence, and it's a democratic state and the safest country in Africa. So everything you hear in the news that's going on in South Africa, apartheid from before to whatever is going on today, it has nothing to do with Botswana. Separate borders, independent president, and its own beautiful country. And here it is. Some of you may know Botswana through the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, both a book and now a TV series. Also, earlier on, The Cry of the Kalahari, because much of Botswana, as you can see in the upper left image, is covered by Kalahari Desert, including our yard. It is mostly Kalahari sand. And then the movie, if you remember, of those of my age, The Gods Must Be Crazy. It was also filmed in Botswana. So the interesting part, John Briggs, you had mentioned what latitude I am in Botswana. So I live in Maun, Botswana, M-A-U-N. It's actually pronounced Maun by the locals. And as you know, or maybe some of you know, that I spent almost 30 years living on the big island of Hawaii, which was at plus 19 degrees and 155 degrees west. Well, Botswana in Maun is minus 19 degrees, 23 degrees east, 178 degrees apart. So I'm basically living at the antipode of volcano Hawaii. You can drill a hole through the earth from volcano to mound nearly. And look at the size. I mean, they're almost the same in size and in shape. Well, so it's really ironic that it happened this way. Now, Botswana, the main city is called Gabs or Gaborone, and it's way down in the lower right in the 5 o'clock position. I'll show you. Way down here where my arrow is. And this is close to the border of South Africa. But where we live is up here in Mound. And all of this is Kalahari Desert. Let me just get back to play. So we are at the tips of the fingers of the Okavango Delta, which is a 1000th UNESCO World Heritage Site. So Mound originally was a cattle post. We are not a town, we are a village. And the main thrust of this area is to get to the Okavango Delta, where all the animal wildlife is. So this is an aerial view of Mound, where it's basically centered around this long airstrip. We have a river that runs through it. It's not a perennial river because it depends on the rains in Angola, which come down, feeds our river. But then if we have a dry season, the river doesn't reach the ocean. It just evaporates into the desert sands. So it's not a perennial river. And you can see we have no skyscrapers. It's just one-story houses that go on. We have a population, widespread population of about 100,000 people, with about perhaps 1,000 or 2,000 expats that live here. And just a few minutes drive outside of Mountain proper, you're in the wilderness. And it's not uncommon to have elephants. In our rivers, we have hippos and crocodiles and so on. So we do have to be careful when we observe because wildlife is present. And we still have modes of transportation that is in some regions where if you want to get across the river, the best way is to take this Mokoro. So why did I come here? And the answer is this young lady here, Deborah Carter. Now, Deborah, some of you may know if you've been on Travel Quest tours, Deborah is a travel agent. She's from England. She's lived in Botswana for more than 25 years. And she used to coordinate Travel Quest eclipse tours. She's been on a dozen eclipses, and she has a vast knowledge of Africa. In fact, in the early days, she would overland. That means in a vehicle, take visitors for 5 months and drive and go from England through France, Spain, across the Mediterranean Sea, and drive all the way through Africa and back into Botswana, and then return. And she did this for a living for a while. And so she knows Africa, and she is a travel agent. In fact, she's also a yoga instructor, and she is any of these, is this gallery of us blocking the images at all?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, you can see the full screen, can't you?
Yes.
Can you not? Yes. Okay. Anyway, so when we got together, we started our own yoga and stargazing safaris. So now we take people out, and you can see here, you can be with the meerkats in the center image. People do yoga, and then we have the telescopes out and we do stargazing. And she's also coordinating, as we had discussed earlier, she does the Sky and Telescope's Botswana Stargazing Safari. This is the one image from 2018. Literally, we just got off one. I just returned from the latest Sky and Telescope Botswana Stargazing Safari yesterday. And it was fantastic, impeccable skies. Everyone was happy, lots of wildlife. And this is something, especially if you're interested in, we can talk about later at the end. It's well worth it. It's quite the experience. Wildlife is right in front of you most of the time. And the beauty of Botswana is that it's not a game park. The wildlife is free. And so and the vehicles don't have to stay on the roads. You can drive off-road to find it. It's just an incredible experience. Here are some of the animals that you can see. We've taken these on the stargazing safaris, from elephants to leopards to rhinos, Cape buffalo, leopards, hippos, baby lions, jackals, lions, zebra, kudu, giraffe, hyenas, sable. And if you're a birder, Botswana has some incredible birds. In fact, on this trip, if you're a birder, there's a lifer called the Pell's fishing owl. And we had a mother and a young just within about 20 feet from us, from where we were staying. But we have these paradise flycatchers. We have the largest flying bird, lilac-breasted rollers, giant eagle owls. And it's just a plethora of incredible fish eagles, ground hornbills, you name it. It's all here. And we basically have 3 seasons. We have a dry, hot season, a dry, cold season, and then a hot and wet season. And the hot, wet season also is especially incredible for atmospheric phenomena, where we have lightning storms, mammatoform clouds, rainbows, halos. And the lady in the bottom right, you can see, is a friend of ours who was outside hanging clothes, and with her little smartphone, took the photo to her left, which you can see these extraordinary ice crystal rings that you don't often see. These are like a 9-degree halo, the normal 20-degree halo, a 22-degree halo, 24-degree halo, and a 26-degree halo all at once. It's just incredible. Now for the dark skies, well, here you can see a map of the sky at night, and you can see New England, mostly the East Coast, look at it, Europe and so on. Now I'm gonna escape here. We are down here, this red dot in Africa. So you can see we're extremely dark skies, hardly any light pollution at all. Let me go back up. This is a shot from our house, looking over toward the Ada Carina region and the Colsac. So even from Maun, the sky is pretty incredible. And now you're going to say, how did I actually get to stay here? Well, once I met Deborah, I came to Botswana. She arranged all the travel. That's why I didn't even have to look at a map. I just had to get off the plane. And then after going back and forth from the US to Botswana, I applied for a film and a research permit, which I received from the government, which allowed me to spend in total up to 4 years to do research on the cultural side of Botswana and their association with the night sky. So I spent a lot of time over the 4 years with the San people, now called the Basawa, and they're a click language. And there's several tribes throughout Southern Africa that I've met with to learn the sky from them and their mythologies. And here I am with one of the groups. They're incredible people. I had an interpreter, of course, because I don't speak click language. But they have, they're essentially live outdoors. They're somewhat semi-nomadic. Some have stationary places to live, but they're true hunter-gatherers. And they also do trances. They have trance dances in which they contact the spirit world and become the animals and associate themselves with the spirit ancestors in the sky. So it's fascinating to watch them go into the trances and to see them transform. The San have also been well documented that they have exceptional eyesight. In fact, it's believed that the eyes evolved in environments similar to that of Botswana. And the Sand people had names for the individual moons of Jupiter. They watched them dance and they recorded them. This is of course pre textbook. So it was part of their mythology. And one beautiful myth that they have is that, like other cultures, the stars are the spirits of their ancestors. But what I like about one of their legends is that the brighter the star, the more important the individual that had passed, and the fainter stars of those who have passed away but long ago. So it's kind of cute to look up at the sky and see it through their eyes. In fact, they've created like the Aborigines in Australia and other cultures in South America, they saw more constellations in the dark sky, in the dark nebulae, than they did in the bright. And here you can see the giraffe, which the coal sack is the head of the giraffe, and then the long dust lanes that slide through Centaurus and Norma and into Scorpius becomes the body of the giraffe. And one recent legend that I heard was the Pipe Nebula, Barnard's Pipe Nebula, which you see off to the left, was the tail of their dark scorpion, which after the meridian transit trips the giraffe, which falls headlong into the earth. And they also have a beautiful myth of how, since they are hunter-gatherers, especially at the times of no moon, the young that stayed home by the campfire wanted to help their parents guide them back home from their hunting at night. And so they would throw things into the fire, which threw up the ashes from the fire, which then became the Milky Way, which helped them guide them back home. That's just cute. But my favorite legend is they also had that the moon was born a male, and then after half moon became female until it gave birth to itself and then became male again. But the best legend, I think, there's many, but was this one of all the phases. And it starts off as there's a hunter who goes out and claims an animal and takes the skin in which he covers he and his wife to keep them warm at night. Well, over the course of the night, the wife starts to steal the covers. And so we have the waxing of the moon until the man is fully exposed, and then he starts to claim back the covers again. And that's the waning of the moon until it's new moon and it's time to go hunting again. So it's just wonderful. So all of this, I created a book from Penguin Random House, and it's called The Night Skies of Botswana. And it's really was driven, of course, by the research permit that I was allowed, and this is the creation from that research permit. And it gives a lot of the local star lore of the Basawa people. And it's also going to be a handy booklet for the guides who are helping customers and clients come into the Delta, where they show them the night sky in the pristine conditions, and now they can share these stories with their clients and to spread the wealth of astronomical knowledge. But I have to tell you one funny story. So I was with the Basawa at night, and they were showing me some of their stars, and then suddenly a satellite goes over. In this case, it's the ISS, and I thought this was great. So I tapped one on the shoulder and I talked to the interpreter and I said, "What is that? What is that going over? What do they see?" And so in their traditional way, they gather on the ground and they click among themselves in their click language. You don't know what they're saying. And they're drawing things on the ground. They're taking sticks and placing them, and they talk among themselves for a long time. And then finally, I asked the interpreter, I said, "What are they saying? What do they see?" And he says, "It was created by the black man." And then they're talking, and they said, from far south. I said, "Oh, okay, but what is it?" And the interpreter said, it's a satellite. So they knew what a satellite was. And they were just joking with me. So anyway, that was, but the best thing that I liked was one night with a group in Hansi, and I was sitting with them. We were looking up at the Milky Way overhead. And I said, when you look up at the night sky, what do you see? And the answer was peace. And that kind of tells you something about the people. And the Botswana are a peaceful people. And in fact, they became a British protectorate because when South Africans in the 1800s and later wanted to take over Botswana, all the peaceful people left that region, Bechuanaland, and they came in and they formed ultimately what was called Botswana. So something else happened within 6 years when I was here, and it's only twice in my life I had to experience this. Once was in January of 1999, I was living in Hawaii. This was actually over Kentucky or something, but we had a brilliant bolide that I was out and was about to go out comet hunting one morning, and this intense light suddenly appeared, and then it exploded directly overhead. And I saw all the fragments fall and come down, and there was something on the order of 12 shock waves, sonic booms that occurred after it. Now, we never recovered any of the particles, but this event triggered all the seismographs on the island. But unfortunately, it occurred over the southern part of the island, the Big Island, which is volcanic. And so you're going to be looking for a black rock on black lava flows. And also, shortly after that, the Pacific Ocean. So pieces were never found. So now we come to 2018, and we had the Catalina Sky Survey discovered the asteroid 2018 LA. Well, Deborah, my wife Deborah, and I were out in the bush, and I happened to be extremely ill. In fact, I was lying down in the tent, just sick, very sick. But my friends had tried to contact me because they said it's the first time in history that they detected an asteroid before its fall. In this case, 7 hours before it fell. Botswana was a good place for this asteroid to fall. And so, as I said, I was sick as a dog. And Deborah looked out and she saw a bright light outside the camp. And shortly after that, we thought it was someone on a night drive coming back with their spotting scope. But here's an image that was captured in South Africa looking toward Botswana. And that was the actual bolide exploding over the horizon. The camp manager and several of the guests saw it. And then when I got back to Maun the next day, I helped collect, I went around and interviewed people and to try to help pinpoint and triangulate where this object would have fallen. And you can see the approximate fall zone, and part of it was in Botswana, part of it was in Namibia. But one person I spoke with was in the Kalahari Desert at this camp called Dinaka, and he saw the terminal blast. This is an artist rendition of the object. As it flew over, it exploded in just multitude of pieces. He saw the terminal blast in the air where it suddenly vanished and the pieces fell and fragmented. So the object was most likely in the Kalahari Desert, which is flat, scrubby, a desert, and littered with spore, animal spore. And yet, Peter Jenniskens from the SETI Institute, from people from Finland, the local scientists from the Botswana Research Center, they formed long lines and covered the Kalahari Desert for 5 miles, walking back and forth. And one of those sharp-eyed locals, sand people, picked up this piece, this fragment of the meteorite. And Peter Jenniskens and Mohoswisi Gabaderi, who found the piece underneath the bushes in the Kalahari Desert, that small little spore-like piece. And it turns out that it's actually probably a piece of Vesta, the asteroid Vesta, and they're calling it the Mutopi-Pan meteorite. And it landed after a 23 million year journey. And they found several of these fragments in Botswana. Then on the other end of the spectrum, we have what we call ghost meteors. The sky's so dark here that we have these flashes of meteors, but they're more like just vapor trails, like almost like fine, faint comets expelling a breath. And here's one I actually photographed. We call them ghost meteors. Just a trail that's between the Milky Way and Mars. It's just this long streak, this long, faint streak. So it's not a sharp pinpoint that slices through the sky. It's just a very cometary-like form, piece of fragment of dust. So how dark are the skies? Yes, so here we have Mound, and I'm gonna escape. So here we have Mound where we live. This is the Delta region. And then we go here to the Makati Pans, this little region right here. And it's only about a couple of hours away. And it's the remnants of a vast salt lake. It's 12,000 square kilometers, and it's one of the largest in the world. And it's just flat, 360 degrees around. As you can see, you just walk out. It's sort of like walking on the surface of Triton, just crunching out. You look as far as you can see, there's absolutely nothing. And then we set up camp, and we build a little fire. We have flat horizons, and then we sleep out under the stars. Now here you can see at the bottom of the frame, that's Deborah on her bedroll. So we sleep, it's a very comfortable bedroll. It's actually probably like 10 inches thick above the desert floor. And then we're just looking up at the night sky. This is the Eta Carina region. The coal sack is at the top. And you can see the stars almost down to the horizon. And you just sit and contemplate and look at the amazing sky. And then this photograph is probably a 60-second guided exposure. And that's it, just a single shot, a single frame. And then we're able to see, it's beautiful occasions. We had a sunrise partial eclipse. This was the annual eclipse that occurred over Madagascar, but we received a partial eclipse. So we were able to get the green flash as it rose above the horizon, and then all the miraging effects as the sun rose and the sun partially eclipsed. It was actually a fantastic and awe-inspiring phenomenon. Then we have fun. We had a partial lunar eclipse, and we in the Pans, and Deborah got some of her yoga students, and was able to create the composite showing the different phases of this maximum eclipse. And we've had a couple of total lunar eclipses under clear skies, extremely beautiful, full eclipses from beginning to end. And we also had the non-eclipse, the penumbral eclipse, which is only 40%, 41%. But if you look at the images where it says compare, if you look at the top image where it says compare and look at the other one that says compare, you can see an extremely slight shading of the penumbra. It was visible to the unaided eye, clearly visible through binoculars, but that I had never seen an eclipse like that, where it's just 40% penumbral eclipse, yet you can make out the difference with your eye. We've had two transits of Mercury, the May 2016 and the November 2019. The beautiful Venus and Pleiades conjunction, of course, but we had the Pleiades upside down. And this was also a stunning, we had a total lunar eclipse next to Mars, which was at opposition, on the day of opposition in 2018, with some of the wildlife. Just incredible. Now, this image, it shows the 2020 opposition of Mars. And you can see the Milky Way here. This is from the Pans, and the Milky Way is upside down with Mars above it. And the images on the right, I took through a 3-inch teleview refractor. And this is just with a 50 mm lens and hand holding it to the eyepiece. And I put at the bottom image on the lower right is actually a 60-inch Mount Wilson photograph, of course, from the 1950s. But you can see that how the technology has changed. And of course, we had Mars up at about 70 degrees altitude. In the southern hemisphere, during these grand oppositions, Mars is better positioned for the southern hemisphere. So I was quite impressed by the amount of detail you can see through a 3-inch refractor. And it reminds me of John Briggs when we went to that hybrid eclipse in the Carolinas, and you had your 3-inch refractor, and we were looking at Mars. I mean, it was also a pretty fantastic view, I remember. That brought back memories. And recently, I'm still writing books. I wrote this book, Mars, from Reaction Press. It's just 2021, it just came out. And it goes through the history of Mars from early humanity to Elon Musk. So it's a sweeping overview of our relationship with Mars. And then we had the Great Conjunction, Saturn and Jupiter, during the closest approach. Another stunning, and this is the view through the 3-inch again, photograph with the handheld camera. And we've also had some fantastic comets. Really, since 2018, 2019, until just recently, we've had a string of beautiful southern hemisphere comets. One was Comet Wirtanen, which was a periodic comet. It came up south before it reached you guys, and we had early views of it in Erendanis. It was a beautiful binocular object, very large, close approach to Earth. It came within 12 million miles, and then passed by the Pleiades. And this photograph was even taken under full moonlight, and you can still see the comet quite stunningly, as did this giraffe. Anyway, and then we had Comet Swan, which was really, we were hoping would be a grand show in the Northern Hemisphere. But this is from our house. You can see the zodiacal light, and that little stellar mark is Comet Swan at about 6th magnitude, and had quite a beautiful tail, but only through binoculars, not really with the naked eye. Naked eye, you'd probably see a degree-long tail, but photographically, it had 10 and probably up to 20 degrees of tail. Here's 6 and 2 CD. You can see it again, a beautiful photographic comet. It was really lovely to see. You could see it with the unaided eye, but it only achieved about 5th magnitude at maximum. And like I said, probably just a degree of tail to the unaided eye, but still a remarkable comet. And as it approached the sun, it started to grow, started to form a slight dust tail. Dan Green and I were making magnitude estimates off of the SOHO images. You can see the comet off to the right, and it looked like it was going to be something, and then it fizzled out. It didn't survive perihelion passage. And then immediately after that, we had another 6th magnitude comet, which is beautiful. This is M46 at lower right. And Comet 2019 U6 Lemon. And it was just another beautiful binocular object with a faint tail. And as soon as it started to fade, it was joined by 2020 F3 Neowise. Now, this was in our evening sky. You couldn't see Neowise from the Northern Hemisphere yet. It was, like I said, in Monoceros and pretty far south. In fact, Comet Lemon was outperforming Comet Neowise when it was in the southern skies. And we had no idea if we would ever see it again. And here you have the comet on the left before it reached perihelion, and then it had its perihelion flare, which unfortunately when we could not see, and then while you guys were having the best show, we kept at it, and then we got the comet a few degrees above the horizon. You can see it here. This is post-perihelion, sure, about a week after you had your best views of Neowise. And at first, it was in the bright twilight, in the dawn, before the sun, and then it came out, and we had it rising. It had a beautiful green head and a reddish tail, like those bloody scimitars, because it was coming through the dust. And then it gradually rose higher over the desert landscapes, and that's about as pretty as it got from here. And still, it was another beautiful photographic comet, but naked eye, you could see it, you could point it out, you could squint. But I think we're still overdue for a really fantastic comet, like Comet West or something. And then right immediately after that, we had Comet T2 Pan-STARRS, which was a little bit faint, but in one field of view with a 70mm lens, you can get Neowise, Pan-STARRS, and Comet Lemon in one frame. I've never seen that before, so that was pretty remarkable. And then it faded off. It joined the Zodiacal Light, which was, in a way, ironic, because one theory is that the Zodiacal Light is leftover cometary debris. And of course, we had the superfall and rise of Betelgeuse, which you can see demonstrated here. The image on the left is Betelgeuse at minimum, and then it's rising back to its sort of super maximum, where it almost rivaled Procyon in brightness when it became in full gear. One thing I've been doing, it's a carry-on from what I did in the Northern Hemisphere, is I started memorizing the Milky Way, sort of like in the vein of Peter Collins and George Alcock, down to about 9th magnitude through binoculars, looking for novae. And we've had a few bright novae, Nova Musca, magnitude 6.5. And it was in a field that I had been memorizing. I happened to be in England at the time, and I don't think I would have discovered it. This is sort of what you do in the scheme of memorizing. Those red dots show the constellation Musca moving up into the Southern Cross in Centaurus. And you just make mini constellations. It takes a long time, but it's really a fun endeavor. And given the amount of coverage, photographic coverage now, and they're getting novae so early on, I'll probably never be the first to discover a nova, but I just enjoy making the constellations and memorizing the sky. And then we had in 2020 Nova Reticuli, which was at 5th magnitude, and that was a real shocker because it's really on the outskirts, far outskirts of the Milky Way, and Reticulum. And I like Reticulum, and Marion, you like this because of the New Hampshire tie-in, right? But Nova Reticuli, which here you can see it at maximum light, and then as it faded, it turned red. But Nova Reticuli, Reticulum is famous for the Betty and Barney Hill flying saucer incident, where they said that the aliens were from Zeta Reticuli. So the nova wasn't near Zeta Reticuli, but still, it was in Reticulum. I thought you'd appreciate that. And you guys had the nova in Cassiopeia. Now, this is a hoot, because even that we're at minus 19 degrees, but we can still get pretty far north in our coverage of the sky. Proof of that is this photograph. Now, I didn't see this with my eye, but I just went out, and this is 7 minutes into nautical twilight. So not astronomical twilight. This is 7 minutes into nautical twilight, looking 4 degrees above the horizon. And that little star on the left, at bottom on the left-hand frame, right next to the leaf, is Nova Cassiopeia 2021. And you can see in this diagram, I've overlaid an AAVSO chart. You can see the stars that are being blocked by the branches in the photograph. And I use this to identify the nova. But I was able to get it near maximum light when it was just 4 degrees above the horizon. So I thought that was pretty amazing. And we had a yoga safari, stargazing safari out on the Pans. just recently in 2021, and a fast nova occurred, Nova Herculis. It came up to magnitude 6. Now, I just happened to photograph the sky in that region of sky. And when I got back from our safari, Dan Green called and said, did you hear about the nova? Did you see it? And I said, no, but I'll look at my images. And I looked at my images, and I got the nova at maximum at 6.0 north of the coat hanger. So that was just total serendipity. I had no idea that there was even a nova in the sky, but I was able to, anyway, get an image of it. So what about the skies of Botswana? So if you use the Border class of sky darkness, you need your zodiacal light, zodiacal band, and Gegenschein. M33 should be naked eye. The Milky Way should cast shadows. The last one, I think, is kind of funny, but I have a different way of showing what's dark sky. Jupiter and Venus degrays dark adaptation. I mean, that's kind of a hoot, but I have another way of proving dark skies along that line. Okay, so we have the zodiacal light and band. I mean, it's pretty prominent, especially right after, during astronomical twilight. It's extremely bright. It's very brilliant. And here you have the zodiacal band. You have all the planets, Venus, Mercury, the moon, Jupiter, the zodiacal band going up to Mars and Saturn with the Milky Way upside down overhead. And you can see the faint band of the, here, I can show the band of the zodiacal band going straight up along here, along the plane of the ecliptic. And the Gegenschein, this is an image I took from the Pans again recently. You can see the Gegenschein here, this glow, the counterglow. And this is the zodiacal band cutting through Mars into the Pleiades with Jupiter and Saturn, and the Milky Way setting upside down on the horizon. Here's the zodiacal light with the crescent moon, the Milky Way, and the Large Magellanic Cloud out on the Pans. This is the Milky Way setting, and this is an exposure showing, you can see shadows of the tripod from the center of the Milky Way, even though it's down low on the horizon. And then during the 2018 Sky and Telescope Botswana Stargazing Safari, on that one, we camped out on the Pans, and we had Mars at opposition. So Mars was about as bright as Jupiter at this time. And what we did is we took an eyepiece and we put it on a piece of paper, and we had Venus in the west, Mars rising in the east, and we had the Milky Way very high in the south. And if you look carefully, you can see the shadow of Mars here on the piece of paper. You can see the shadow of Venus from Venus being brighter on the right. And this is the shadow of the Milky Way. It's projected on a piece of paper. And Peter Tyson took this photograph from S&T, the editor of S&T. So we had a lot of fun with that on that trip. And we can see M33 naked eye fairly easily. But the beauty, one of the grandest things that we have in the Southern Hemisphere, and is a marvel to look at, are the globular clusters. We were doing this on this last trip, and it's just trying to compare the two big guns, Omega Centauri and 47 Tucani, and just each has their own beauty. Omega Centauri, because of the vast openness of it, its splendor of resolution right to the core. And 47 Tucani bringing probably the collision of two globular clusters. So it's an agglomeration of two globular clusters, and then trying to peer straight into the eye of 47 Tucani and resolving it. It's magical. And just to have these two, when you put M13, for example, next to these, it's just, there is no comparison. And I'm not downplaying M13, which is a beautiful cluster, but honestly, there are so many open clusters, globular clusters in the southern sky, like 6752 in Pavo and 6397 in Ara, which are spectacular wonders, and 362 Tucani. Of course, these are Hubble Space Telescope images, but nonetheless, these objects are available for observation. And even with your naked eye, seeing the darkness of the Milky Way, this is the Lagoon Nebula. This is with a 50 millimeter lens, a 60-second exposure, just one image, a 60-second guided exposure, and in the Trifid Nebula as well, just showing, I mean, I'm not an astrophotographer. I'm just sticking a camera on an ioptron and letting it run for 60 seconds. And this is what you get. It's just the amount of icy nebulosity that you can see throughout that, the reddish hues at the top of the, it's fascinating. And of course, the dark nebulae, here's the dark horse upside down near the center of the galaxy. Again, 60-second exposure, the type of images, but nothing compares to this region of the Milky Way. Probably the heart of Gould's Belt, where you have Alpha and Beta Centauri on the left, the Coalsack and the Southern Cross at center, Eta Carini off to the left. The majesty and the mayhem of the Milky Way around this entire region, you can't take your eyes from it. Again, this is a stitched image of 250 millimeter lenses. Probably, again, just a minute. But look at this. Here's the Southern Cross and Eta Carini. Look at all the little objects. And this is just a sample of the objects that are visible in this region at night. These are the brighter objects, the little jewel box, the pincushion cluster, the rich man's jewel box, the jewel box itself. We were doing that at this last S&T trip. We were taking votes. We would go from the little jewel box to the rich man's jewel box, which is to the jewel box itself, and voting on them, and going through the globular clusters and voting on them. And I mean, it's just so remarkable. The southern Pleiades, we have a southern beehive, just so much. And Eta Carini, this is Eta Carini on the left, probably a 70 millimeter shot of it, probably 4 frames stitched together with the keyhole. We were looking at the keyhole with the S&T group the other night. It's pretty obvious in the dark nebulosity, the homunculus. And of course, we have the Magellanic Clouds. We took this image from the 2018 S&T tour. And you have 47 Tuc, you have 3 NGC 362 at top, you have the globular clusters within the small Magellanic Clouds. You have, you can see these things through binoculars. Most of what you see here, you can see through binoculars. So you can study deep sky objects in another galaxy with binoculars. And some of these things are visible even with the unaided eyes. And then, of course, throw the telescope on there, and it's just what you can see magnifies. This is the Large Magellanic Cloud from our yard. You can see the bright spot at lower left is the Tarantula Nebula. You can see the bar of the galaxy, the giant air lobes coming off. And all of this is very similar to a binocular view. If you were just to train, 8x42 binoculars on the galaxies, it's sort of reminiscent, a little bit punchier, but it's reminiscent of what you would see. And of course, this is maybe a 200 millimeter lens shot of the galaxy, of the Large Magellanic Cloud, showing many of the star fields and the nebulae and the Tarantula Nebula. Again, sort of an endless vista of wonder. And some of the objects that you can observe, some of the brighter objects that are available to you to study. So, come to Botswana. And then we're so close to Victoria Falls. it's just a short plane ride away. You can do that as well. And if you're wondering about Botswana itself, is it safe? Because you hear about so much about South Africa. The Global Peace Index rated Botswana #1 is the safest place in Africa to visit in 2021. Botswana is the safest country in Africa. It's the 30th safest country in the world. Its Global Peace Index score makes it safer than the UK or Spain. And I'm going to add to that, the United States, or many places in the United States, much safer. And if you ever wanted to get a good idea of the unity of the community between the locals and the expats, is to watch this movie, which is a BBC movie called, I believe, it's called A United Kingdom. And it's about how the first president of Botswana married an English woman, and changed the course of history. And it just tells you a lot about what it's like to live here. So we hope to see you soon. Come and visit until we meet again. Thank you. And I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Steve. This is incredible.
Yeah.
Thanks again. This is wonderful. Thank you for taking the time, and glad everybody else could be here.